Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, the March Madness bracket is revealed. We have hit March Madness. It is time. Are you locked in? Have you made your brackets yet? How many brackets are you making? We'll talk about more March Madness in just a second. If you were just tuning in, we talked about the whole bracket. We did a little bit of breakdown on some teams. My pick for the March Madness winners and some matchups to look out for. In this segment, we are going to talk about the mid-major Cinderella teams, the teams these double-digit seeds that you haven't heard of that might go deep, that you should keep an eye on, and that you should be prepared to bust your bracket. And we'll talk about all that in just a second. After this segment, we're also going to get into some NFL with the Vikings and the expanding role of backup quarterbacks. So stick around for that. There's a lot to get into. But before we get into the Cinderella teams, I'd like to remind everyone that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. Again, leave a tip or donation, a message with it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there for me, you, and everybody else to see that is watching across the internet, across the world, in the future, in the past. We appreciate anything that you do give. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Like I was saying, let's get right into it because I'm very excited about this topic. Cinderella teams to watch in March Madness. These mid-major programs that you may or may not heard of that are not national media brands. You know, they're not these blue bloods, these major conferences. They're not getting a lot of attention, but they're good. And they could ruin your bracket. And you don't want that happening. So I've got a couple teams here that I think you need to watch out for. And I'm just going to start off at the top with my school, my current school that I attend, James Madison. All right, James Madison is a very, very good team. They cruised through the Sun Belt this year. They have 31 wins. That's tied for the most in the entirety of Division One with UConn. And the reason that they are a 12 seed is because of the Sun Belt. It's a weak strength of schedule. They lost one. They lost one bad game. They lost two games to App State. App State, a team that beat Auburn. So App State is not that bad of a team. But JMU has a prolific offense. Their offense is ninth in the entire nation, 84.8 points a game. Very, very good. Offensively, defensively, they're not too shabby. They have Terrence Edwards, who can do just about anything. He averages about 3 assists a game, 17 points, 5 or 6 rebounds, and TJ Bickerstaff, who won National Player of the Month earlier this season. So there's a lot to love with the JMU Dukes. They get a tough draw against Wisconsin. Wisconsin, a Big Ten team who beat Purdue earlier this season. That's probably my favorite game of the entire first round. Not just because it's my team, but also matchup wise. It's not just me saying this. I'm trying not to be too biased here. They match up really well against each other. I think this is really a flip-flop game. I do believe JMU is going to win this game, and if they do, they face Duke in the second round. And my hot take is I think they win that game. You look at the matchup, you look at the way that Duke has played recently, losing to NC State, obviously not as big of a loss losing to UNC, but Duke can get flustered really easily if things aren't going their way. And against a team with such a prolific offense like James Madison, if you can't get them uncomfortable, you're going to be in for a world of trouble. And if you can't respond once you're in trouble, like I don't think this Duke team can, you might run into some issues there. I don't think they're going to beat Houston. The Achilles heel of this James Madison team is when you make them uncomfortable. Because they're very good at moving the ball around and getting open shots, getting these good shots, but you make them a little uncomfortable sometimes on defense, get that pressure up, they're going to start rushing their process. So, something to look out for. Staying on the same side of the bracket, another team that people should keep an eye out on is McNeese State. McNeese State is playing Gonzaga in the first round, so it's two, I guess, mid-major schools. Gonzaga has kind of made its way into I guess, the blue blood conversation with how successful they've been over the last couple seasons. But McNeese State does not turn the ball over. They just simply don't. They don't turn the ball over, and they are very, very good at shooting the three. And that is a recipe for success in the tournament. They play this press style. They're very up in your face, very aggressive. They force a lot of turnovers, and this is where they win the game. You need to be very disciplined against them. You need to not turn the ball over, which, if you look at a team like Gonzaga, like Kansas, who they'd play in the second round, I think McNeese has a very good shot of making it to that Sweet 16, maybe even further. Purdue can get a little flustered sometimes. I'm not too worried about them, but those are two 12 seeds you should absolutely keep an eye out on. They could make a lot of noise in the tournament. As well with them, it's really the 12 seeds are really solid this year. Before we get to them, before we get to Grand Canyon, though, I want to talk a little bit about New Mexico. New Mexico, another one of those mid-major schools. They play Clemson in the first round. I don't think they're going to be that big bracket busters because they are going to run into Baylor, a Baylor team that has shown that they can compete with the best of them in the league this year. You know, they have 12 quad one games. They're 7-5. They've played so many quality opponents. It's a very battle hardened squad in Baylor. So they shouldn't get too far. But New Mexico is a very good team. Don't sleep on them. And the last big mid-major team that I want to focus on, or that's not true. One of the other ones I want to focus on, Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon started off hot. They had the best record. They lost a couple games. They get in as a 12 seed after winning their conference. And they play St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a team that rolled through the whack. Whoa. I apologize for that. That was a very loud noise on my computer. Anyway. St. Mary's is a team that rolled through the whack. The WC, the West Coast Conference, WCC, excuse me. Conference that also has Gonzaga, also on the 5 line. It's very interesting to have two teams from a non-power conference make it onto the 5 seed. Very cool to see. I think it's great for the sport. I talked a little bit about that before. But keep an eye out on Grand Canyon. I don't think they're going to make it past St. Mary's. I don't think that's the great matchup for them. But if they do get past them, facing Alabama or Charleston in the second round, Charleston, another team. Alabama and Charleston's going to be a fun game. Those two teams score. They put the ball in the basket. They put buckets up on the board. Relentless. They don't really play defense, so it's really just who's going to shoot better. I think that's a toss-up game as well. It's going to be a really fun bracket, I think. I'm very excited. My Final Four this year is UConn out of the East, North Carolina out of the West. I got Houston as well, and then in the bottom bracket, I've got Tennessee. So it's not all 1 seeds. I do have Houston winning it all. It's a tough. It's just so hard to go against their defense. And I know teams like Iowa State have beaten them because they also have elite defenses. And you can shut down their offense. But like I was saying, defense is just so important in this tournament because you can have your off night shooting. If you play with effort constantly on defense and you can keep up with it, you can shut down any team. There's no team that Houston can't shut down. They just have to be on their game. So, something to look out for there. Those are the mid-major teams to watch. Again, I think McNeese State and James Madison are the two bracket busters this year. If you are picking any team in the double-digit seed lines to make it far, I would pick one of those two. They play really fun brands of basketball, high intensity. They score a lot of points. It's going to be fun to watch. I'd love to hear what you guys think the sleeper team of the bracket is, who you think is going to be the Cinderella this year, if you think there's even going to be a Cinderella this year. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all that. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. In our next segment, we are going to transition out of March Madness, head into some more talk about football. The Vikings have had very interesting offseason, losing their quarterback, trading up for a second first-round pick, maybe getting another one for tampering. So they might have 3 first-round picks this year. I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's very, very interesting. We'll talk about them, what their situation looks like, as well as the rise of the backup quarterback in the NFL. It's been very interesting to watch, especially after last season when people were kind of thrust into the spotlight and the backup quarterback shined on teams that won and flopped on teams that didn't. So stick around. We're moving into the NFL. We will be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.